Huh. Children of the Dust, more like Children of the I Need a New Dust cover, am I right? Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Canine Cannibalism. Today, we are going to be taking a look at what happens when the Cold War goes bad, or at least the novelization of it. We are going to be checking out four different books, or four different, two different books, a short story and a graphic novel, and they are as follows. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Children of the Dust by Louise Lawrence, rather. Z for Zachariah by Robert C. O'Brien. And last but certainly not least, When the Wind Blows by Raymond Briggs. So, novels, graphic novel, short story, and a book of many other science fiction short stories that I will never read. But let me tell you, that old book smell is pungent. I love that shit. Anyway, so obviously, a little bit different video today. Nothing, no extreme horror, debatably. No splatterpunk, no rape and fucking people with shit on your cock and eating your mom's vomit, that kind of stuff. None of that today. We're dealing with good old fashioned existential dread. What happens to humanity if something during the Cold War goes extremely bad? Now, some of these books are more in the realm of very sci-fi or have elements that are very science fiction. Children of the Dust. I mean, the entirety of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is like super sci-fi. Some of the concepts in Z for Zachariah, but a lot of it is just very down to earth, like a look at what happens when the war turns deadly, or what happens when we start using things that we shouldn't be using during the war in order to assist us, that kind of thing. So, yeah, stick around. It's going to be great. Obviously, some of my loyal viewers, I don't actually know. I have too few viewers to actually get analytics on like return viewers and stuff. But if any of you are loyal viewers of the channel, you may not be keen on all this content. Wait till the end of the month, 25th. There's gonna be a video you are going to appreciate. So this may not be the video for you, but if it is, stick around. We're gonna have a great time. General trigger warning. None of that. No rape. No child abuse. There is a dog that dies in Z for Zachariah. There is some cannibalism in I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, but overall it's mostly just death. There's some gore in I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, but generally just a lot of existential dread, like just existentially horrifying concepts. I feel like a lot of these books explore that pretty well, in my opinion at least. And without further ado, let's jump right into I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Alrighty, so I have finished I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Give you a quick blurb. I mean, if you're watching this video, sorry, new mask. I mean, it's probably not new for you. I'm probably wearing it at the start of this video, assuming the audio quality is fine. But right now, it's a little bit tight on my mouth. If you're watching this video, you probably know what this book is about, but I'll just give you a refresher. Uh, Evil AI brings about the end of the world, tortures 5 people in its fucking dungeon for eternity because it hates humanity. That's what the story is. General review, obviously, very short story, so I don't really have a whole lot to talk about. This is not going to be a fucking Wendigoon video on it. I haven't seen that video, and I probably never will. But I mean, he talks about the book for like what, an hour and a half. I have no interest in talking about this for that long. I will simply tell you what I think about it, and then I'll give you a plot summary, and we'll be out of here, at least for this one. Book, as I said, existentially horrifying, just horrific in that sense. Terrifying. It's terrifying. The concepts that are brought up. Story is written incredibly well, in my opinion. The English is beautifully degraded, almost as if you were locked inside of a cavern of an AI's belly for 109 years. I don't know if that's just Ellison's style. It might be, because I haven't read any of his other works, and I'm not going to, if I'm honest. but it lends itself, whatever it is, very well to the type of story. It almost feels as if the English is degraded through time. It's very good. The work is just beautiful and surreal throughout most of the story. It's very avant-garde. It's very interesting. It's not avant-garde in a huffing its own farts kind of way. It's just special. It's just different. And I very much liked that, if I'm honest. It's very interesting. Like it's one of those stories where there will just be talk of a science fiction concept. Like he'll just say a name of something and he won't explain it. It's just you have to fill in the gaps of like what the fuck, what is the festival? What is God, the Cavern of Rats? I mean, you can assume what the fucking Cavern of Rats is, but he never like talks about it. Or the Slough of Despond, I think is what he called one of the other ones. A place. They walked through the slough of the, or we passed through the slough of despond, I think is what it was. Like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but that's pretty cool. It's a very interesting work, and I very much enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it. Again, if you are watching this video, you are probably intimately familiar with it and its concept already, but whatever. So, let's get into a plot summary. Major spoiler warning. Obviously, I'm gonna tell you about the fucking book now. So, timeline of events. World War III, well, the Cold War spirals into World War III, and it becomes very complex. It becomes very complicated. And so these countries that are part of this war build large subterranean computers, artificial intelligence, in order to understand the inner workings of the war, in order to catalog whatever they do. They build these AIs and they build AM, Allied Master Computer. I'd assume that is the Allied, the US's master computer, but it's never really expressly said. There's a little bit more lore about which countries are which in the games that I read about, but I'm not really going to get into game lore. But I would highly recommend at least reading the Wikipedia article on the game's plot if you decide to read the story, because it really helps filling in a lot of the gaps. The computers ended up honeycombing the entire Earth, so it just ended up like the entire subterranean Earth was these master computers. And then they, or one of them, became sentient and connected themselves, and essentially its hatred for mankind caused it to kill all of mankind. And in the book, it's kind of explained as it's given unlimited intelligence, but it doesn't have the ability to go out and experience and walk and be human. And so its hatred, because of those things, drives it to kill all of mankind, except for 5 people. You have Ellen, who is a woman, the only woman in the group, and she essentially whores herself out to these men out of almost like duty. Like they have nothing else to do while down in these caverns, so they might as well fuck. Then there is Benny, who was a brilliant theorist, but has lost his mind because of AM, because of the AI, and he was also mangled and mutilated by the AI so that he now resembles more of like an ape, like a chimpanzee. There is Ted, our protagonist. He's mostly left alone by AI, but AM, the AI. Uh, and he thinks that the group hates him for it, and they very well might. We're not given anything to state to the contrary of that. As a matter of fact, the only thing we're given is like in support of that. So they very well might hate him because AM mostly leaves him alone. There is Gorister, who has been made completely apathetic, mostly because of the machine. There is Nimdoc, who is not, that's not his name, but AM forces him to all call him by that name. Apologize if you can hear my cat. She's very hungry, even though she's already eaten. She's pretty obese, and we've desperately been trying to keep her food down. I'll bring her on camera one time, maybe, if she'll let me. I won't claw my fucking face off. What? Oh yeah, Nimdoc. That's not his name. They make him. AM makes them call him by that name because it likes funny noises. We don't know what AM does to him, but it's implied that it's very bad, and the group is never allowed to know what AM does to him and what his life was like before. They have been underground for 109 years ish. And after killing humanity, AM is still so hateful, so it keeps these playthings to torture for eternity. Essentially, it keeps them alive by whatever advanced AI sci-fi stuff it can do, replaces all their organs, simulates an environment. Maybe, fuck, I mean, for all they might know, they could be already inside of a simulation that it's created and they're just invincible, or not invincible, immortal. I mean, that's probably not the answer, but just it probably fucks with their perception of time as well. Like it tells them when the days pass, and that's what they go off of for knowing how long it is. So, Nimdoc, he has a hallucination of canned food in an ice cavern, and it's like explained like he was hallucinated, which tells me that it's AM. It gave him the hallucination. That actually might be a proper use of the word hallucinated, but I've never heard it used like that. Like someone was hallucinated by something else. I don't know. Anyway, Nimdoc was hallucinated canned goods in the ice caverns, and the way they talk about ice caverns and a lot of the other places in the book makes it seem like they've been there before. I don't know that they have. It's just kind of how it's written. So Nimdoc essentially goads the rest of the group into traveling to the ice caverns to get these canned goods, because what the fuck else are they going to do? I mean, they're starving to death. Literally, not to death. AM keeps them alive, even though they've been starving for weeks, and then at one point they end up having been starving for months, but it keeps them alive somehow. So they travel, and they travel, and they travel, and at one point they come across a huge bird that AM has created, fashioned. I don't know how, but it's created this monstrous bird. It's described as having a head the size of a mansion, and when it flaps its wings, it sends the group like spiraling back into the caverns the way they came, like miles and miles and miles and miles. And then they come up to it and they realize that it's made of food, like meat. And I don't remember what AM says, but he's like, if you can kill it, if you beat it in a battle, you can eat it or whatever. And then AM gives them a bow and an arrow and a water pistol. So obviously they can't fucking kill the giant bird. Um, and then they travel to the ice caverns and they find the cans, and they don't have anything to open the cans. And so Benny loses the fucking rest of his mind and starts eating Gorister's face. Ted essentially realizes that AM is going to keep them prisoner for eternity. And so he decides to mercy kill the rest of the group before AM can stop him. And he stabs them all in the neck with icicles, essentially, so they die instantly. And then the book cuts to several hundred years later, where Ted has been made into an amorphous blob-like thing so that he can't hurt himself. And all of AM's wrath, infinite wrath for humanity, is directed onto him and his person. And he celebrates that he was able to take away AM's playthings, like his friends. They're not really friends. But I'll read you what it says. Blah, 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 blah. It makes me a little happier, referring to the fact that he was able to take away the playthings, and that AM is going to be mad about that. And yet, AM has won, simply. He has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream. So, yeah, Ted's locked away for eternity as a fucking blob to be tortured endlessly by an AI. That's where the book ends. And yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to say spoiler-wise. It's like a review. The bird thing was kind of interesting, but wasn't really bad or good. It was just kind of a cool example of AM's power over things. But yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya. Hey there. So I just finished yesterday. Yesterday. Children of the Dust. I have finished it. 183 pages, written by one Louise Lawrence. I'll give you a blurb. So, nuclear holocaust happens. Lots of people die, but then a new subspecies of human rises from the ashes. That's the book. So, um, let's get some general review stuff out of the way. The beginning is very existentially horrifying, much like the whole of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. The writing is incredible. Reminds me a lot of The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which I will be reviewing at some point. And what else? The book contains a very good look at the failures of the governments of the Cold War to properly prepare the civilian population for a nuclear disaster. I thought that was decent. We'll also look at that same thing when we read When the Wind Blows, but I felt this book did a very good job portraying the failures of government in protecting the people, and that is pretty much all I can actually say without spoilers. So we're gonna get into a plot summary here. Massive spoiler warning. So we are in the UK. I did some G city that's like Gloucestershire or Gloucester. I never know how to pronounce UK city names because they're so fucking weird. But it's the one that starts with a G and then is Lou and then a C or something. Whatever. That city, we're near that city. We're in a small little village on the outskirts. And we meet Sarah, who is running home from school. They've just gotten word that a nuclear strike is inbound. I'm assuming the Cold War has turned into a nuclear holocaust, essentially. And she's running home to find that her stepmom, Veronica, is boarding up the house with her I believe, half brother and half sister. I think it's stated in the book that they're Veronica's child, so half brother, half sister. Uh, Half sister Catherine, half brother William, and her father's not home. Her father was out lecturing. He's a professor. I think they said he was lecturing in Birmingham or something. Whatever, doesn't matter. They are barricading up the house. Radio's telling them all this information, most of which will become useless immediately. It's just put as much distance between yourself and the fallout as possible. Stay inside for 14 days until it dissipates. Obviously, we know now that that's not enough time, but whatever. Uh, all this other information. Bombs hit. Radio goes dead. It's it. They're left in the darkness in this room that's completely blocked off from the outside world. They got furniture piled up in front of the windows because really the a lot of the ideas that were spread by the governments, especially the UK government at the time, about like, and again we'll go over this more when we talk about When the Wind Blows, but like the fucking tent shelters made of doors and stuff in like the back corner of your house or in a room in the middle of your house. The idea is to put as much distance and as much mass between yourself and the radioactive fallout as possible. But it's kind of a losing battle. Like unless you literally seal your entire house off, you're kind of fucked. Anyway, they're in the dark. They start spending their days sitting there. William's a little shit and won't stop throwing tantrums about stuff. They lock their dog outside because obviously they don't want to have an animal enclosed in that space with them for 2 weeks, shitting and stinking up the air. But William won't stop fucking sobbing about his goddamn dog, and then they explain to him that William Buster, the dog, is going to die, and then he switches up real quick, but then he goes back to being a little shit. He's 5, by the way, so 5-year-old nuclear apocalypse locked inside for up to 2 weeks in the dark because there's no lights, no running water, that kind of shit. Kind of par for the course if I had to guess. Catherine stays in her house under the table for this whole portion, and she's very cautious. She stays under the table. She only drinks water from like sources that she knows were closed, like with a cap on them. She's very, very, very cautious. Veronica can't sit and listen to Buster starve to death, so she goes outside and finds very quickly that no one else is trying to survive. They're having like all having like one big party. She's in a makeshift rad suit made of garbage bags and duct tape. Now let's talk about that for a second. So rad suits don't really protect you from radiation per se. like the actual gamma rays and stuff. I know very little about nuclear stuff, but they don't actually protect you from the harmful rays of the radiation. What they protect you from is the dust, the fallout. So it keeps it from getting into contact with your skin, which prevents, and your eyes and in your mouth and in your lungs, which prevents poisoning essentially. So it doesn't actually like really fully work like that, but it does protect from the dust and stuff. Anyway, Veronica goes out. She comes across a farmer. They shoot the dog so that it doesn't have to suffer from radiation poisoning. And she goes to the store and picks up a bunch of stuff. The Everyone's giving away as much as they can. The bakers are making bread. The farmers are shooting their livestock as they get sick, that kind of thing. And they essentially, Sarah and William and Veronica kind of, or, well, not William. William doesn't understand, but they kind of resign themselves to death in order to keep Catherine alive because Catherine's the survivor, I guess. Um, and they really only do that. Veronica starts to get sick almost immediately because she's been outside, and she goes outside multiple times after that. But they wake up one morning before the 14 days are up, and they find the entire house is blanketed in radioactive fallout because they forgot to put something up the chimney to block it from the dust from coming down, from settling down. And they clean the whole house, but they all probably received a fatal dose of radiation or near that from the dust, except for Catherine, who stayed under the table. Now, would the tablecloth actually protect her? I mean, maybe it would protect the dust from blowing under the table, but I mean, whatever. Veronica gets sicker and sicker, and Sarah has to start taking on more and more of the duty, so she starts going outside. She gets sick. They add on an extension to the area that they're walled off, and William starts to get sick. Veronica leaves them and takes some pills with her and essentially says, I'm going to go kill myself now. I'm about to die. Sarah, it's up to you now. And so Sarah takes Catherine, covers her in the trash bags and stuff, and brings her to a farm where this guy named Johnson, the farmer, like late 30s guy, he's got these like glass houses, greenhouses. They're not described as greenhouses, but they call them glass houses. Like they got animals in them and crops in them, and he's also like in a valley, which I would think would be detrimental, but I actually don't know how environmental stuff works with nuclear fallout and rain and stuff. But Sarah brings Catherine to this guy and is like, hey, you need to take care of my sister. She's not sick. Everyone else is sick. You need to protect her. And he's like, well, I'll help. I'll do that because he's not sick. Everything in the valley is pretty much fine for the most part. He's in a makeshift rad suit as well. And then Sarah essentially is like, her duty is done. So she leaves and she talks about how she's going to give William one of the pills and take some herself. And then they'll die together essentially. And then we cut to the chapter called Ophelia. This book is 3 parts, by the way. First one's Sarah, second's Ophelia. And we're with the father, Bill, and he is in a bunker, a government bunker, out of chance. He met like this super important science lady on the side of the road while he was driving, and she essentially was like, hey, I need you to drive me. This is happening now. Drive me to this bunker. I'll get you inside. He's there. The government of the bunker is an autocracy. With this old general guy leading, he's obsessed with like restoring the UK to its former glory, but that becomes less and less likely. Bill fathers a child with the science lady, more out of like necessity or like a duty than actually loving this woman because he doesn't love the woman. He teaches the kids and accidentally radicalizes a boy named Dwight against the government of the bunker, and essentially the general is like under like official government requisition during times of crisis business, has been like taking stuff from the people they call the outsiders, the people surviving outside of the bunkers, and so he's been sending people out to essentially take their shit and like bring it back to the bunker to like keep the people there alive. And so Dwighty boy and Bill get wind of the next day the military is going to go out and take some cattle, like an entire thing of cattle from a group of outsiders. And Dwight's like, all right, we can't let this happen. As Bill kind of agrees with him. So he and Dwight, and then Ophelia tags along. Ophelia being his daughter. They all go to this farm to warn them and try to hide the cattle which they don't successfully do. But it turns out it's the farm that Sarah dropped Catherine off at. And so Bill reunites with Catherine. Catherine's like horrifically burnt from the sun. We don't really talk about like the long-term effects of like just the radiation in the environment. I mean, people like develop cancer and everything, but later in the book, it's more just about the sun. Like you can't be outside because the ozone layer is completely burnt to shit. So you are just covered in burns. Uh, and anyway, Catherine married the late 30s something farmer guy when she was 14 and he tried to father many children with her, except only two of them survived, one being this girl named Lilith, who is what the book will refer to as a mutant, and another child who also was born a mutant. And essentially the mutants are they're born with covered in white hair, which is described as like protecting against UV light, although I'm pretty sure darker hair would be better for that because melanin and everything. But like they describe as like everything in the environment having like evolved to have these little pale white hairs all over them. But I'm pretty sure darker hair is better for that. It doesn't matter. They also have these big eyes with these tiny little pinprick pupils to help them see better in like the through all the solar radiation. And we also eventually find out that they actually see like in UV wavelengths. It's really weird how it's described. Anyway, military people come, and military guy is like striking a deal with the farmer Johnson about like taking some of the cattle but not all of them. And then Dwighty boy blows up one of the fucking trucks because he's like actually just an anarchist. And then he runs off, and that's where that chapter ends. And then we go to Simon, years in the future. He is the child of Ophelia and Dwight's brother Wayne, I want to say. It's like Wayne or William or something as well. It's a W name. And he is traveling with a bunch of the other people from the bunker. Essentially, everything in the bunker is like broken the fuck down. Like their computer technology is gone kaput. They're out of gas. The walls are crumbling, and all of the stuff that they like were teaching their children, like calculative and theoretical and scientific stuff, like about technology, is useless because they don't know how to make bricks. Essentially, they don't know how to rebuild. They can't pump gas out of the ground in order to repair their technology and make plastics and things. So they're essentially SOL. So a group of them is out essentially looking for places, these outsider settlements, where they can push their masses onto these people so that like they can live out the rest of their humanity with some decency before eventually dying out. And yeah, so most of these settlements now are made up entirely of these mutants because it's generations down the line now. Because all of the normal humans are dying out because of the sun and because of cancer. So Simon's out there. He sees a little, she's like 12, mutant girl named Laura, and he cuts himself on a rusty piece of metal while trying to save her from a pack of dogs. And he gets taken back to Laura's settlement in order to essentially clean the wound to prevent tetanus or gangrene or whatever. Even though I don't know that would really prevent tetanus, but it doesn't really matter. He meets Catherine, and it turns out it was the farm. He's in the settlement he's at was the farm, and he meets Catherine as well as Lilith, and finds out that he is related to Laura because Laura is the daughter of Catherine's other daughter, so not Lilith, Lilith's sister. She's his cousin, like once removed or however that works, or his grand cousin, I think. He finds out that these mutant people have like telepathic and telekinetic powers. So that's interesting. He essentially realizes after being like horribly racist to all of these people and like running away and getting attacked by dogs, and then Laura has to come and save him, essentially realizes that his kind is obsolete. Homo sapiens are dying out, but what they can do as these bunker people is help the mutants with their technology and their calculative know-how, because the mutants have been focusing on the physical stuff like building bricks, making bread, that kind of thing. And so Simon has all these big dreams of like reconnecting an electrical grid using solar panels, blah 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 blah. Doesn't matter. Book ends with him saying something along the lines of, or referring to Laura as one of the Homo superior, the children of the dust, and that's where the book ends. Now, telekinetic stuff, telepathic stuff, really weird, really weird. like, I mean, I could kind of like ignore the just gigantic evolutionary leaps and bounds. I guess it's explained away as like a genetic mutation that ends up being extremely helpful. Like it's a radiation mutation that ends up being evolutionarily beneficial. So it becomes dominant. It's a dominant gene, and I mean that's kind of like again, not a scientist, don't know how any of that shit works, but that's kind of interesting. But I can kind of ignore that. But then we get to like weird telepathic telekinetic stuff, and it's explained away as like the theory is that maybe back in the day, back in the Middle Ages, everyone knew how to do that kind of stuff. But then as we became more reliant on technology, we kind of locked that part of our brains away. Really weird, really stupid. They fly a glider that, using the telekinesis. It's dumb. It's really dumb. It goes like a really weird sci-fi route for no reason. And all of this is sci-fi, granted, but it's weird. It just feels very. It doesn't necessarily feel out of place with the tone of the book. It just is very strange. It's just strange. I didn't really enjoy that aspect, but what can you do? Overall, the book was very, very good. I'm very, very pleased by it. I would highly recommend it. Book traumatized the shit out of me when I was younger. Not like necessarily traumatized, but like just the fucking like everyone is just slowly dying of radiation poisoning in the beginning. That shit is fucked. It's just fucked. It's a very decent look at like radioactive death and emphasis on like this is not a fate that a little girl who has nothing to do with this should like this should not happen to her. She should not die with her teeth bleeding, her gums bleeding, her hair falling out, rotting sores, blood in her shit, and her vomit and vomiting up blood. It's just like a little girl who did nothing wrong doesn't deserve that, right? It's just I don't know. It's just a very interesting look at that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean that's all I have to say to you. I will catch you in a second. Hey there. So I just finished just whatever Z for Zachariah by Robert C. O'Brien. Book is 249 pages, broken up into a myriad 26 chapters. Uh, Text is decently sized. I mean, it's a page turner, not in that it's super interesting or anything, but in that you will turn the pages quickly. I mean, I'm a slow reader. I was reading probably 2 pages a minute or a full spread a minute. So it's a decently fast read if you just get into the flow of it. Essentially, blurb real quick. There's a girl named Anne. She lives in a very secluded valley after a war has happened involving nuclear weapons, possibly the Cold War. And she is alone. And for some reason, the valley is unaffected by the radioactive death that has killed everything else. She's alone. All of a sudden, there's a guy that comes over the horizon. He comes into the camp, but he's not really a good guy. And that's pretty much the blurb on the back. So, no trigger warning, as I said, existential dread. I think I said in the beginning, there's a dog that dies in the book, and I think it's hinted at one point that the bad guy might kick the dog, but it's not like said or anything. You just like the dog whimpers and runs away after, and then something bad happens. There's some kind of rapey scenes, but no actual like. I don't even think he actually like touches her. No, he does. He gropes her at one point, kind of like runs his hands over her. Really not bad. Everything Stephen King has written is worse. Everything World War Z is worse. The Day by Day Armageddon books are worse. Pretty much every single piece of horror literature is worse than this because it's not really horror, except for one scene. We'll get to it anyway. General thoughts. So, a lot of this I will have to wait until after the plot summary in order to address because a lot of it is chock full of spoilers, but we'll go with what we got for now. The book is horribly dull in the beginning. I don't even know how you make this concept, like a nuclear apocalypse, dull. But the setting of the book is what makes it incredibly dull. Think Little House on the Prairie, but not interesting, not based on truth, and set in a nuclear apocalypse, except the entire book takes place in a safe little valley pocket where everything is pretty much normal. So the nuclear apocalypse has no effect on the setting. It's literally just a homesteading book, and then the nuclear apocalypse is mentioned. And it takes place in when the book was written, so the 70s. Cold War era. I think the Cold War ended in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. I don't remember. No, because Vietnam doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Around that era, 60s, 70s. Uh, so it's really fucking boring. And I mean, even Little House on the Prairie, some of those books were god awful. I think I stopped reading at Farm Boy or whatever the one is when it's about her husband. I stopped. But like, just think like original Little House on the Prairie, just fucking not interesting at all. There's some weird stuff with the main characters at 15 who then turns 16-year-old girl. And there's a lot of weird stuff about her like fantasizing marrying the 30-year-old guy when he first shows up and like having kids by him. And she's like constantly fantasizing about like, well, I always hoped that if someone came to the valley, then it would be a man, and then maybe there would be other kids someday in the valley. And she's like considering marrying him like the next season. A little weird. I'm just gonna say it. A little weird. There were some times when she was talking about that I was like, ugh. You know, like, girl, you were 15, maybe not, but who am I to say? I'm a normal human. That's who I am to say. Um, and is there anything else here that I can say? Yeah, okay. So she is consistently like exhibiting perfect victim behavior throughout the book. You'll see what I mean when I get to the plot summary. But she is like the character is really the biggest issue I have with this book, aside from the horrible boredom at the beginning. She is like perfect victim material. She's I'm not gonna do spoilers right now, but you will see what I'm talking about. She's also the worst possible person for the post-apocalypse. Like, again, it's really just a homesteading book. If she was not in this little fucking valley area where she could farm and drink water from wells and fucking do carpentry or whatever the fuck else she does in this goddamn book, she would be dead. She'd just be dead. She can't do anything that requires like any amount of mental fortitude in order to survive, in order to preserve her well-being, because that's her character. She can't do the hard things. She's just a poor little farm girl who can't do the things that are, I would say, were necessary to her survival, and just by luck she happens to survive. She's a really fucking stupid character, and it's kind of infuriating later in the book to read about her. Loomis isn't much better. The guy that shows up, he's also really fucking stupid towards the end. That's all I can say without spoilers. And with that out of the way, let's jump into the plot summary. Massive spoiler warning, as always. So, there's a war. This is like 60s, 70s era, probably around when the book was written. I would assume it is based off, if it's not the Cold War itself, it is heavily inspired by the Cold War going bad, like in that scenario. But whatever war is going on, Cold War, whatever, it goes bad. And the war lasts for about a week, which is a lot different than a lot of these other books that we've read so far. I mean, not including I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. I mean, I guess if you include his war on the AM's war on the humans, that lasts for a very short period of time as well. But Children of the Dust, and then when we get to When the Wind Blows, like the war is over immediately because it's a nuclear war. Like, anyway, it lasts for about a week. They use nuclear weapons in all the major cities. They use other anti-personnel weapons like nerve gas, which apparently is the thing that kills the most people in the war. It's responsible for the most deaths. Like, everyone just dies from the nerve gas. And then apparently she says at one point they used like bacterial weapons, like biological warfare. And then she also says they used other anti-personnel weapons, according to what she heard on the radio. The fallout in the area, or in the whole fucking, they're in the continental United States, it has rendered everything toxic, which is not how fallout works. But like the air is radioactive to breathe. That's not really how fallout works. The water is unsafe. Sure, until the fallout decays, until the radioactive byproducts, the fission products in the fallout in the water decays. Yeah, that makes sense. She's alone in a valley. Anne is alone in a valley after her family and the shop owners that were also in the valley. It's like her family settled there originally, and then there were some shop owners, and there's a church that wasn't used. But her whole family, including her youngest brother who sneaks onto the car as they're leaving, they leave to go and see if there's anything out there past the valley after the war ends. They never come back. Everyone in the towns around her is dead. The Amish community, like I think she says to the west, is dead. The nearest town, everyone is dead from, I'm assuming, the nerve gas. And the nearest like nuclear bomb went off like 100 miles or so, I think is what's said. The only toxic thing in the valley is one of two creeks. I think it's Burden Creek, and it is highly radioactive. And then the other creek is fine. And then they both merge into a pool at the end, I think is what's said, or they merge together. Uh, the fact that the valley is fine is explained away as like a weird meteorological phenomenon. I don't know if that is scientifically accurate at all, considering all of the other scientific inaccuracies throughout the book, but it is sci-fi, so I will give it a pass. She's there. She's living the homesteader's dream. She's farming. She's got cattle, chickens, not a dog, but the dog shows up later. His name's Pharaoh. He was her brother's dog. She doesn't know where he's been, but he randomly shows up, and it's a whole thing. You'll see. He's important later. She notices smoke over the horizon from a campfire. And as the days pass, it gets closer and closer. And so she roughs up her house, digs up all the vegetables in the garden, lets the cattle and the chickens out, makes it look like no one's been living in the valley. And then she goes up into the hills on the side of the valley and she hides in a cave. Apparently, like from the way she describes it, like there are multiple woods in the valley, so the valley is pretty large. I mean, it's pretty big. So she hides in a cave in the hills, and this guy walks in. And he's wearing this weird green plastic suit, and he's got like a cart behind him that's also covered in this green plastic. And he's walking in with a Geiger counter, and he's like shocked about all the green shit, right? And he realizes that nothing is radioactive. He tests one of the creeks, the non-radioactive creek. He tests all the plants and everything. He shoots one of the chickens he comes across, and he's like freaking the fuck out. He walks along the whole valley, and then after he is done, in a moment of recklessness and tiredness, he assumes that both of the creeks are the same, from the same source, and he jumps into the highly radioactive one and stays in, I think he says like 10 minutes. Over the next few days, he starts to get increasingly sick and decides that she needs to help him. She can't just let him die, so she comes down out of her hiding spot, careful not to let him know where she came from, and she helps him. He's in the tent, he's sick, his fever passes, and he explains that he is a scientist who's well read in in radiation, as well as radiation poisoning. So Dr. Loomis here is his name. He was working in a laboratory studying plastics because he specializes in plastics. He was studying and making plastics that are magnetized because magnetic field block radiation for Earth, so do so for suit. I don't think that would work like that, but that's how it's explained, is that the plastic suit that he was wearing, the safe suit as they call it, is magnetized and it has a magnetic field. And get this, now that I can forgive because I am not well read enough on the subject of the magnetic field around Earth in order to tell you if that would actually work or not on such a small scale. My guess is no. Also, magnetizing plastics, don't know about that one. I'd assume you'd have to have a ferromagnetic material like iron. I'm just using big words over here. I'm probably using them incorrectly. You'd have to like have iron or something in the plastic, but I don't know how that would work. I'm just gonna say it. But then also they developed a air filtration mask thing that, because the air is radioactive, which again, nuclear weapons don't turn things radioactive. I mean, they can. I did a lot of reading on other things while reading this book, double checking if anything that was being said was true. There's this thing, I think it's called neutron activation or something, and it's essentially when a high level of neutrons or something makes material radioactive. And from what I know, it only happens like during nuclear disasters, and then also like it would happen at the center of a nuclear bomb, like right around where there would also be like neutron radiation and everything. But it doesn't like make air radioactive. That's not how that works, from what I understand. It's the particles that make things radioactive, and then you can clean them off. But then you got to be really careful about it, obviously. But the fucking filtration mask, and then there's also how they have a water filtration system. It blocks the radioactive part of the air or the water, which I'm going to say for a fact that does not work like that. I am that confident in that. It's the only suit, the one that he was wearing. because they were making it in this lab and the government was supposed to come up and like take it and test it and then we were going to start production, but then that never happened because the war started. His sickness, so he explains to her that he's in like a that was the initial fever and then he's going to have a period of like lucidity. I think that's the correct word. And then he will go and become much more sick and he might die. And to tell you how old this book is, they're using R's Rontgens in order to describe how much radiation he got, like his dose of radiation. They're not even using grays. They're not even using sieverts. I read a lot while reading this book because I was like, I don't think that's the measurement that we use to describe biological doses of radiation, and it's not. We use sieverts. Grays is for matter in general, and then Rontgens is for air. I think it's like per kilogram of air, and it's not a good measurement because it's for air, and humans are not made of air. And then grays is for matter, but sieverts is better because it's like specifically you can do like specific calculations for certain types of radiation for certain parts of the body or whole dose for the body. It's meant for like biology. So that just, but he got like a lot. He said if he got like probably 300 Rontgens. I really should have looked up how to pronounce that. But he says if he got 400 to 500, which in my research, that is correct, he will die. So he becomes increasingly delirious. She helps him. Anne finds out through Loomis's ramblings that he killed a coworker named Edward, because Edward was trying to sneak out of the laboratory bunker thing that was inside of a mountain that they were in for the plastic suit making when the war started. Edward was trying to sneak out with the safe suit to find his wife and child. And I mean, he wasn't originally trying to sneak out. He was like, hey, let me do this. And Loomis is like, no, man, that's a dumb idea. They're both dead. What if you die? You won't be able to, and I'll be stuck here. I'll die from the air filtration system breaking down, the water filtration system breaking down. I'll run out of food. Edward doesn't want to hear it. Edward tries to sneak out from what I can discern from the ramblings, and then Loomis shoots him. And confirms this by checking the inside of the safe suit and finding 3 patched holes in the chest area, so gunshots. Loomis gets very, very sick and nearly dies, but then he doesn't die. So before he got really sick, there was one instance where he like snapped at her, and it could be like, and she explained it away as like, oh, he's just upset about the fact that he might die. But then afterward, it starts getting much worse. He gets annoyed easily. He starts exerting control. He's like hiding the fact that he's like getting better and walking from her. He is like scaring her to see what she does, like how she reacts. He becomes extremely possessive of her and the valley and the farm and everything about it. One night, and this is a terrifying scene, actually was like scary, like a scary scene. She wakes up in the dark and she hears Pharaoh running down the stairs. He's yipping. And then she hears Loomis in the room with her breathing. And I don't know, just that visual fucking sent me. I was like, that's something. That's something. Anyway, he tries to pin her to the bed. Now, rapey? Yes. In the book, she says that she knows what's going to happen and she needs to react. Now, that could either mean that she knew he was about to try to pin her to the bed, or that could mean that she is assuming that he's going to try to rape her. From how they talk throughout the rest of the book, I'm going to assume that he wasn't intending to rape her. I am, at least at that point, I'm assuming he was just going to try to subdue her and tie her up, because that is what the rest of the book is her trying to him trying to subdue her and tie her up and keep her prisoner captive, probably for sexual purposes. But you can also interpret that scene as he's going to try to rape her, however you want, whatever you like or dislike. That's up to you. She lunges away just in time. He scratches her back and rips her shirt. She goes up and hides in her little cave that he doesn't know about. And then we start getting to the point where she's just really fucking stupid. She actually decides to make a deal with him, where she and Loomis will both live in the valley. She'll do all the farm work. She'll bring him food while he gets better. And he'll leave her alone. This dumb start like so. Remember, I said she used like perfect victim material. She constantly, and I mean constantly, is blaming herself or finding other like ways around his behavior. Like I don't even remember what she says, but she somehow like turns it around about like maybe he was I don't even remember what she says, but she passes the blame off to something else about his like weird deranged rapey behavior when he tried to like pin her to the bed. She's constantly like, well, maybe it is my fault that I did that. Maybe he has reason not to trust me. Maybe he's just upset with me. Maybe it was a touchy subject. Like she is constantly trying to not blame this guy for being a fucking lunatic. It is actually it starts to get infuriating. Just listen. She sees him hunting her from her little hideout. He's like running down the road. They describe him as like an Indian, like a Native American on horseback. He's like holding his gun over his head. He's riding down the road in the tractor, hunting her with a fucking rifle, stalking around the shop where he thinks that she is, with a fucking rifle, like a little fucking assassin. And she actually is like, well, what if he doesn't mean it that way? What if he's worried that I'm going to shoot him and that's why he brought the gun? This fucking dumb is infuriating. She has like 20 different opportunities to end this fucking mania. Like she sees him actively training Pharaoh. He has him tied up. Like training Pharaoh to track her to her location. And she's like continuing to bring him water and food and shit. Like she could poison the water from the wrong brook. I thought that was the direction they were going to go in when they started focusing on the fact that she was bringing him fucking water. She could have shot him numerous times when he was outside unarmed, but that's not her character because she's just a little fucking happy-go-lucky farm girl. Anyway, he shoots her. Who could have seen that coming? And she discovers that he wasn't trying to kill her, he was trying to maim her. But she still is like, what if he meant to miss me and somehow fucking shot me? And then she's like, well, no, that's actually fucking stupid. I'm being stupid. I'm being stupid. It barely grazes her foot. And she is like, well, he's trying to catch me and kidnap me and keep me captive. Loomis tracks her to the cave at some point. And she sees it happening. So she runs and hides. And she decides in that moment that she's going to have to kill Pharaoh, or otherwise she'll never be safe. And so she takes a gun, and she gets up in the tree. And then the last second, she can't do it. The dog barks, and she's like, oh, but he's a little guy. She can't kill the dog. Then she decides she is no better than him. That they are both murderers. That there are two of them in the valley is the exact wordage she uses, I believe. But she decides because he shot this man and killed him, even though it may have been justified, she is no better than him because she was truly considering shooting a dog, even though she didn't. She considers herself just as bad as him, an actual murderer, because she truly considered shooting a dog to save her life, even though she ended up not being able to. She decides that instead of fighting him, she is going to steal the safe suit and leave the fucking valley to this guy. This fucking maniac is just gonna let him like have the last bastion of living things in existence that she knows of. He traveled, assuming you believe him, assuming he wasn't as delusional before his fever during his little period of non-feverness. He traveled most of the continental fucking United States, cross country, and everything was dead. And she's just gonna leave it in the safe suit because she had a fucking dream that there are kids in another valley like hers somewhere waiting to be taught because she wants to be a fucking English teacher even though she is 16. So she decides she's going to leave the valley and let this guy just have it. She's going to go out into the fucking unknown deadness of America and let this guy have her home. Also, she finally comes to the conclusion that Loomis is insane. And then that's why she needs to leave, because she can't kill him, obviously. She can't kill the guy. I mean, that would be insane. This dumb falls for the stupidest trap. He leaves the fucking... So he's locked the shop door, right? To keep her... He's trying to starve her out. He's taking the keys from the tractor because he doesn't trust her with it. That was the first thing he did that was like super controlling after the whole rapey incident in the middle of the night. She comes around a bend one day and sees that the shop door is open. She contemplates for about 10 seconds and then is like, oh, maybe he forgot to close it. And then by pure dumb luck, while walking up, a rabbit runs out of the brush and the guy misses her leg with the fucking gun and she runs away. He immediately starts chasing her with Pharaoh. She leads him on a wild goose chase. She hops over some rocks across the dead stream, the radioactive stream, and then waits in the brush with her rifle. And he comes out of the brush on the other side, Loomis, and Pharaoh immediately falls into the radioactive water. And then she fires a shot over Loomis's head and he runs off because he is shocked, even though he knew she had a gun. He would assume, at least. She says that he should have assumed that she had a gun, but then he's fucking shocked that he gets shot at. I don't know. Pharaoh dies, and then she devises the final plan where she is going to escape the valley. She puts a note on the front porch telling him, Loomis, to go to the south side of the valley. She does this at dawn before he's awake, and then she hides around the side of the house. And this dumb motherfucker takes this note at face value and goes to the south side of the valley without his gun because she told him not to bring his weapon. So naturally, she steals the safe suit and the cart trunk thing with the fucking green plastic over it, which also includes the water filtration device as well as his 2 Geiger counters. Now, he locked up the shop. He took away the key for the tractor. But he left the fucking safe suit in the trunk with all of his shit out in the front yard. So really, she could have just come at fucking midnight and been off with, like, she didn't have to do the whole fucking song and dance with the note and shit. She could have just fucking took the shit and left because it was out there for the taking. He didn't take it inside. He didn't lock it up. He just left it in the fucking field. And then he wanders off into the middle of bumfuck nowhere because her little note told him to. So she steals the suit. And she exits the fucking valley. And then she hears him coming on the tractor. She's like, I gotta face him. And then she faces him. And she's like, well, I mean, if he's gonna shoot me, then he's gonna shoot me. I can't stop him. I can't shoot him back. That would be crazy. And then they talk to each other. She's like, well, if you shoot me, you'll be really alone in the world. And then he starts crying. And she starts crying because she knows she's walking away from her valley. And then she leaves. And then at the last second, he's like, wait, I saw birds over there. They were circling. I don't know where they went. I couldn't find them. I think it's implied that he saw them like on his travels like to the valley after seeing all the green stuff in the distance. And she's like, thank you, sir. That's so nice of you. And then she fucking walks out into the deadness and is like, I am hopeful that I'll find the fucking kids from my dream. So, final thoughts. Let's take a, give me a second. The fact that she always assumes the best about Loomis's actions, if you couldn't tell based on my animation, is fucking infuriating. It is so terrible, I will say. Positives. Before the rapey scene, his dynamic with her is actually scary. Like, you can tell he's poking and prodding her to see what reactions he'll get, and you're just waiting for him to attack her. And then the scene in the bedroom is actually fucking horrifying. Like, that's what it's all been coming up to. That's the culmination. That's the climax of the situation, and it is fucking terrifying. And his dynamic with her, like, he asks her to play piano, and then he's sitting behind her, and she's like terrified, and then he taps his cane to make her like wheel around. And he's like, oh, sorry, I dropped it. And he stares at her like, silly old me. It's scary. That was very well written, and I am impressed by the way that the author, wrote that dynamic. Before that, it's fucking boring. Except for the little, like, information that he fills in when he's lucid before going back into delusion. After that, it's infuriating. the little in between parts, the information that he fills in, and his dynamic with her after he gets right when he gets better, up to the really rapey bedroom scene, is fucking sweet. Now, would I say that those two parts are worth reading the book? No. Have I seen the movie? No. Will I ever watch the movie and be able to compare the two? No, because this book was not worth the time I spent reading it. Just gonna say it. This one's kind of a fucking shitter, if I'm honest with you, but hey, I'm just a guy on the internet. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say to you. I will catch you in a second with When the Wind Blows. Hey there. So I finished When the Wind Blows by Raymond Briggs. Now, no trigger warning. Nothing worse than Children of the Dust. Just people dying. The book, I don't know how many pages, not numbered. I probably could look it up. I don't fucking care. It's this thick. There's that many panels, or that many panels on a page. You can do the math yourself. It's a pretty quick read. It's nothing. I mean, it's a graphic novel. It's a lot. There's a lot of text in it, but it's still a graphic novel. Art is fine. It's nothing like insane. The progression that the art takes is very, very nice throughout the book. It changes depending on the situation. I found that to be impeccable, in my honest opinion. This is the second time I've read this book. I read it once before. It's very good. It's a very good look at the failures of government. I guess this will also act as kind of a blurb. Failures of government when it comes to like the little person, especially during the Cold War, like the failures of the government to prepare the populace. Very similar, again, to Children of the Dust in that respect, or at least the first chapter, Children of the Dust. I'll give you a more comprehensive blurb. There's a man, James, and a woman, Hilda, who live in a little house out in the British countryside, and the Cold War goes bad. That's pretty much it. Again, very good look at the failures of government. Horrifying to read, and just really sad as well. It's very, very sad. This book is incredible, and me telling you what happens will not do it justice even remotely. The 100 little metaphors and pieces of foreshadowing and hints to things. There's a very comprehensive deep dive video that I watched before reading it, and I would recommend watching that as well. If I'm honest, I don't know I will link the video in the description. It is very, very good. It also does a deep dive on the movie, which I will say the movie is more disturbing, and I liked the movie better. The book gets across its points much better. The movie is 100 times more disturbing and very nice to look at. Like, the art is very nice in the movie, and the way that it's blended with photorealism, or not even photorealism, with actual footage of like household objects. We're gonna jump into a plot summary, and yeah. So, in When the Wind Blows, massive spoiler warning. In the book, the Cold War, I'm assuming it's the Cold War, it's the Russians versus UK, NATO. The Cold War goes bad. Or it is going bad. Hilda and her husband James are an old couple. They live in the British countryside, and neither of them, James understands more than his wife, but neither of them fully understand what the Cold War is, the inner workings of the war, who the war is against, who the leaders of the war are. It's a very decent look at like how these things become so like removed from actual people, because it's all done with electronics. There's no actual, especially the Cold War, there wasn't actually fighting really, unless you count the proxy wars, which you probably should count the proxy wars, but whatever. And neither of them really understand what the nuclear bombs are, or how they work, or how the radiation works. Again, James understands that much more than Hilda, and he may even understand that a lot more than he lets on to Hilda. James, following government pamphlets, builds them a little hut of doors in the corner of one of their rooms. Okay, so that is an actual thing. And while they don't address it in the book, and I used to think like radiation was the end all be all, like there was no way to block it, like fallout wasn't actually dust, it was fucking rays. Some of it is. Essentially, the idea with that kind of thing, and obviously a lot of these government pamphlets were extremely unhelpful, they were extremely counterintuitive, they contradicted one another. They were very hard to read and understand. They didn't provide a lot of information about Fallout and stuff. I have an American survival guide that's like Cold War era, and it's much more comprehensive than a lot of what I know the British stuff was, especially the little pamphlets and stuff. I'd imagine there's some American stuff that's kind of the same way, but I know for a fact that a lot of the British stuff was very unhelpful, especially all of the pamphlets and movies, VHS tapes and stuff were very kind of useless. The idea behind a shelter like that is you block off a room in your house, like they do in Children of the Dust, and it blocks fallout, so the alpha particles and beta particles, which are the result of the nuclear fission byproducts or fission products that are in the fallout that decay and put out radiation. They put out the ionizing radiation, the beta particles, the alpha particles, and the gamma radiation. The beta and gamma and alpha particles are like physical, like they're particles. So alpha radiation is a helium atom, I believe, but it's like a weird helium atom. It's got like, I don't remember. It's a weird helium atom. And then the beta particle is either a positron or an electron. But the gamma radiation is an actual photon. It's a wavelength. So alpha and beta particles don't penetrate very well. So if you block off a room in the house, you protect yourself from the dust itself. As those things decay, they're not gonna really hurt you as much. Especially if you are in like the center of a room or you have a lot of material between yourself and the particles, you'll be fine. Especially if you're in like a cellar or something. But gamma rays or rays, they have extremely high potential for like penetration. And so those are the most dangerous. So the idea is that you put as much mass and distance between yourself and the gamma rays as possible. So you put yourself in a little hut of doors in order to kind of cut down on the gamma rays. There's like halving units for like how much of a certain material halves the rays. I don't know. Again, I am not a science person. A lot of this I learned while reading these books. Some of it I knew beforehand, but a lot of it I learned reading these books and researching to understand fully what was happening. So that's not exactly stupid, but it's still stupid because they don't cover their windows. The room that they're in is not secured. They have a cellar, but they don't use it because the booklet that they have doesn't tell them to use it. And James is worried about one of his conditions acting up because of how damp it is, even though they would have probably been safe in the cellar if they stocked it and stayed there. So they're not safe in their little hut of doors that they have pressed up against the wall. The bombs hit, they're in the shelter, and all of their water spills because they just had it laid across the floor because, again, neither of them understood the sheer depravity that a nuclear explosion like enacts on the surrounding environment. So they didn't understand like the shock wave and the blast wave and everything. They didn't understand that. So they left their little fucking water jugs out because they were like, oh well, we need 2 pints a day. We'll just fucking put them out there in milk jugs. Knocked over, all gone. Obviously the water's out. Don't have any more water. Don't I have a little bit of milk left, but it spoils. They're supposed to stay in the bunker for 14 days. That's the same figure that was given in Children of the Dust. Again, that's like the rule of 7 or something about like, I think it's more to do with gamma rays. It's like 10% of its radiation after the first, oh God, I think it's 48 hours. And then it's 7 times that. It will be another 10% of that 10%. So 1%. So that's 14 days. But I believe it would still last longer than that. And then certain products that decay slower would still be hazardous. So really it should be much longer than that. But I think that is the figure that was given a lot of the time was 14 days. On the second day or the third day, James forgets to stay in the bunker. And then he just like gets out. Like he wakes up, he gets out. And his wife follows him. And then he realizes too late. And this is kind of the point where they get back in the shelter, and this is the point where people who read the book kind of theorize that maybe James does understand a lot more than he's letting on, because he's like, what if there's radiation about? And then at one point he also slips up. He tells his wife, oh, I read it wrong. It's not 14 days, it's 48 hours. And at this point they already have symptoms of radiation poisoning, radiation sickness. But at one point he messes up and talks about how to be safe you should stay inside in a bunker or whatever for a period of time. So there is a theory that James, because I think in the book it's hinted that he has a military background, he understands a lot more about nuclear bombs and radiation than he lets onto Hilda, especially after he realizes that they're both probably going to die anyway. So there's that aspect that I find rather interesting. I think he does know at least enough because he talks about the radiation. Um, he doesn't understand. I think he truly doesn't understand a lot, but I think he understands enough that he understands that they're going to die. And so he tells Hilda, well, it only says 48 hours. I misread it. Don't know how you would misread 14 for 48, 14 days for 48 hours, but that's his explanation. So then they go outside. They go outside of the house, and it starts to rain. So rain out is the term for that, when nuclear or radioactive particles fall out, gets in the atmosphere, gets mixed in with the water and the clouds. Again, not a sciencey person with that kind of stuff, not with particle physics. That's not my gig. And it rains out. So rain out. And it is extremely deadly because you're standing in rain that is full of decaying radioactive particles. And there's a really fucked scene, which is, I mean, there's a lot of foreshadowing to their inevitable deaths in the book, but they're outside, and Hilda, it starts to rain, and Hilda runs inside, and she tells James he needs to come inside before he gets cold, because if he doesn't come inside, he will catch his death. So he stays outside anyway, and he fills up some pails with water, which they then subsequently drink over the next few days. And at that point, it's over. They're going to die. They get sicker and sicker over the next few days. They get blood in their stool. Hilda loses her hair. They get spots on their skin, and their gums bleed. Throughout the book, James keeps quoting a passage from a poem. And he uses this passage to justify the weird, unexplained, and sometimes counterintuitive instructions of the various government pamphlets that he has at his disposal. And the quote is, he keeps saying, "It's ours not to reason why, love," in reference to the pamphlets and their instructions. And Hilda will be like, well, I don't understand why it's telling us to do that. And he's like, ours not to reason why. This is a reference to a poem titled "The Charge of the Light Brigade," which is a poem about a group of soldiers who rush into a battle off of bad intel from their superiors, and they get fucking slaughtered. And the poem is, this section of the poem that he's quoting is, "Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die." And so, at the end of the book, they both crawl, they silently accept their fate, and they both crawl back into the bunker. Their little hut. And as they are fading out, Hilda tells James to say a prayer, but he doesn't remember any prayers, so he says he says part of a prayer, and then he says something about, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today," like a wedding vow stuff, and then he says the whole thing about lying down in green pastures from the Bible, and then he starts saying an incorrect version of the Light Brigade, Charge of the Light Brigade poem. And Hilda's like, no, dear, it's terrible. Stop that. Because he says, into the valley of the shadow of death, which is not in the poem. It's into the valley of death, I believe. And then she's like, no, stop. And then there's a panel of silence. And then he's like, "Rode the 600. And that's the end of the book. So, very sad, very disturbing. End of the movie is slightly less sad, if I remember correctly. It implies that they like go to heaven or something, which is kind of odd, in my opinion, but it's sad. It's a sad book. It's extremely disturbing at certain points. Yeah, that's pretty much it for When the Wind Blows, and that is pretty much it for all 4 of these books. Now, I'm gonna rank them, even though they're completely different genres. I mean, this is a graphic novel. This is weird sci-fi stuff. This is even weirder sci-fi stuff. And this is Little House on the Prairie on crack. But I'm still going to rank them. I would say simply because of the nostalgic value of this book. I read it when I was like 14. This is going to be my top. I would highly recommend this book. Please read it. It's great. I would then say, just simply for what it gets across, When the Wind Blows is second place. I fucking love this graphic novel. I think all of the points that it wants to get across are they're gotten across. They're put across very well. You understand what the book is trying to say. I feel it's done very well. There's 100 little metaphors to what's going to happen to them and about the failures of the government, and it's very good. I would highly recommend it. Then, and this is not to say this is bad, Harlan Ellison's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. I found it very interesting, very surreal. I would highly recommend it. I don't know that it fits among these other books. It's Cold War related, kind of, but I would say it's very good. If you're looking for a good piece of science fiction to read, this is brilliant work. Truly brilliant work. And last and certainly least is Z for Zachariah. You heard all of my gripes with this book, all of my scruples, all of my qualms. No. And that's the video, folks. So, if you like this, please like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like the video, dislike the video. But tell me why you didn't dislike why you didn't like the video. Don't just fucking like jump into the river and swim away, please. Just tell me why you didn't like the video. It's much appreciated. I'm not engagement baiting. I'm not trying to farm for comments. I genuinely would like to know your thoughts. I am too small of a channel to really be actively farming for engagement and comments. Although, because I am small, I probably should be doing that. Keep that in mind. As always, everything I have said in this video, except for the plot summaries, except for some of the direct things that like happen in the books or are related to things happening in the book, it's all my opinion. All of my general thoughts and stuff, that's my opinion. I would highly recommend you go and read all these 4 books. Yes, even Z for Zachariah, and form your own opinions. Because you may really like this. I know there are some people who really like this. I mean, they made a fucking movie about it. Like, there has to be an audience, right? So go read even this. I will leave a link in the description to all of these books where you can read them, except for maybe I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, because that's just... I'll leave a link to one of the collections that it's in, I guess. But the actual, like, original... First off, this was originally printed in... like a collection of short stories of his, and I think actual copies of that, because it's not in print anymore, I don't believe, go for like $300. I bought this for $7, so I will leave a link to a copy of a short story collection with that in it. And yeah, I mean, that is pretty much it. See you next time. I am in your walls.